Hi, this is Thomas Donald Jacobs for Paperboys on Thursday. And Today's topic is, how do you feel about detransitioning? Um, well, first, I can't see myself ever making that decision. Um, I am pretty far down the road to Wienertown and, you know, pretty happy with it. I don't have any personal feelings about it, except that I couldn't see myself doing it. Um, that being said, it's a topic that I'm interested in. I've watched a lot of recordings where people have discussed their detransitions. I've read about some detransitions. I've talked with friends about detransitioning. Um, and what their thoughts were about it. Um, and from my somewhat limited anecdotal evidence, all I can say is, yeah, people do it for a lot of different reasons, and maybe someday I will find myself in that situation. Uh, Certainly, the people that I've seen discuss this, and the people that I've talked to who've done it, they never saw themselves um, doing it either. So I can't say never. Um, it seems unlikely. Um, what's interesting to me is that people detransition for a lot of reasons, and by detransitioning, I'm not referring to reaching the point in your transition where you want to stop because you've achieved the results that you wanted and are therefore going to, not get this surgery or that surgery, or, um, you know, decrease your hormone therapy regimen or stop it entirely. I'm only referring to the people who decide to go back to living as their previous gender. Um, that's what I think of when I think of detransitioning. And again, um, people seem to do this for different reasons. First, you have people who start to transition and then get so far in and then realize that they were not, in fact, transgender. Um, I think that that's really regrettable and is one of the reasons why I kind of go back and forth on informed consent treatment. Um, I think that um, therapy before transitioning in that sense is probably a good idea, um, particularly as some of the individuals that have detransitioned, um, that I've you know seen and known, um, already had begun medical transitioning. And so, on top of whatever social price they've paid a pretty steep physical price too at times, because um, a lot of the effects of um, hormone therapy, for example, are not reversible, or at least not easily reversible. So that's a high price to pay for what turned out to have been a mistake. Um, then I've also come into contact with people who detransitioned because being identified as transgender proved too difficult or too unsafe. Um, I recently, discussed this with a friend who was talking about detransitioning because they felt unsafe. Um, they're from a very small town. Everybody knows them, and they don't have passing privilege like I do. I very rarely um, get clocked um, when I'm going about my daily life, uh, which, I actually do appreciate because we don't yet live in a society um, where um, violence against transgender people is out of the realm of possibility. In fact, it's quite common. So people who detransition because they don't feel safe being identifiable as transgender, um, although they are, that's hugely depressing. In fact, I remember what it was like living before transitioning. Um, I would not go back to that unless I really felt like I had no other choice. So they're choosing a really hard path. So I don't have any negative um, judgments about that. Even if they detransition, the people in the second group um, who are transgender, um, they will always be transgender. They just won't be transitioning any longer. Um, so they'll have to continue to deal with the problems that they had before. Um, being transgender is not a choice. You can be mistaken about it, but it's not a choice. What you do about it, that's the choice. And sometimes the choices suck ass no matter, which way you're looking at them. Um, the only thing that I have a really strong negative feeling about, I guess, with regard to detransitioning are people who detransition and then for some utterly inexplicable reason to me um, go out in public and trash people who are transitioning or the idea of transitioning or the concept of being transgender. You see them occasionally on like loony talk shows or loony YouTube channels, and I gotta say that I don't get. Um, I think that is an unbelievably crap thing to do. Um, I think that you know people who detransition should, as anyone else, feel free to discuss their experiences and their views, um, but they should not be used as sticks to beat the rest of us with, um, whether consciously or unintentionally. Um, Especially considering that, you know, and there is some data to support this, the vast majority of people who transition don't detransition. And on the whole, feel better about themselves and have a greater sense of well being than they did prior to transitioning. Um, and I hope that the people who do detransition for whatever reason they have for doing so um, regain that sense of well being. That's, yeah, pretty much my feelings and my views about detransitioning. So I'll see you next week. Bye.